Hello everybody, my name is Richard Vigorelli and this is Vigorelli Institute. Now, I hope you guys have been enjoying the whole ghost story thing. I actually had a lot of fun doing that one. And check this out. Yeah, remember that bump that was on the side of my face? Yeah, it's gone. Yeah, I had surgery a couple of weeks ago now, and I've got this nice little scar here. I'm actually going to enjoy this scar. I think it's kind of cool. Alrighty, so this video is going to be kind of an interesting one. Had an idea a little while ago, and I want to build us a vampire. Got the notes right here, okay? But before we get started, remember this? Yeah, okay. This video is brought to you by A-Strap Labs. A-Strap Labs is the premier genetic testing company that allows you to know if you are Fae or human. They are also the ones who discovered a thing called a Fae reduction enzyme. It was found by Dr. Natalie Carzano during a crime scene investigation. So, what am I talking about? Well, you will have to read my book, The Hidden Race, which the second edition has just dropped on Amazon. Go ahead and check that out. Link to my website, vimandvigorelli.com, which is the best gateway for it, will be in the description, along with merchandise found on the exact same site. Lots of stuff there. We got shirts, hats, wall art, and more stuff to come. So, without any further ado, let's get building, shall we? Alright, so what exactly is a vampire? Well, a vampire is a humanoid. It is a person that, according to a very ancient lore from multiple different cultures, all over the planet, by the way, this person is dead. And yet they live. They do not have any breath, they feed on blood, and they also have this really weird allergy to sunlight. Well, let's dive into that, shall we? So, what I want to do is I want to take all of the vampire lore that I could think of. I wrote down some bullet points here. And we're going to use that to build what would conceivably exist based on my knowledge of how anatomy, biology, and physiology actually work. Okay, all right, let's dive in. So the name of our species will be Homo sapiens sapiens sanguinis. Yes, sanguinis. Okay, that means blood drinker. Okay, so the most distinguishing factor of a vampire is fangs. Yes, see? Theirs would be a little bit bigger. The reason for these is because of what they feed on. They feed on blood. Don't worry, we will get to that in a bit, but let's look at the obvious stuff first. Okay. Now, the point of the fangs is to break the skin, various other tissues, enough to allow for what is called exsanguination. That is bleeding out, because, you know, then they can drink it. Okay. The fangs are not straws, okay? They, you know, just kind of as we go. That's why they are blood suckers, okay? There's a problem with this method of feeding, though, okay? And here's what it is. The jaw muscles are going to have to be extremely strong, okay? Not only that, the inlaid bone structure of the maxilla and the mandible, which are the two main components of the mouth. Think of this as the hammer and the anvil for crushing things, okay? Well, that's going to have to be rather robust. So finding a vampire, they're actually going to be pretty easy to see, okay? Even if they do bear a vague resemblance to somebody like me, okay? Now, this part of the body is actually going to be very, very robust, and I wouldn't be surprised if there is actually what is called a mid-sagittal ridge for extra muscles from here to attach to. Okay, so that means they're going to have a cranium a little bit more similar to like a gorilla or an orangutan. Okay, maybe even a chimp, I forget. Okay, definitely gorilla though. Okay, here's why. Anything that they feed on is not going to like getting bitten. That it's going to fight back. Okay, so unless you want a mid-sagittal ridge right here, one of the things that you are also going to have is a behavior capacity. Okay, and that behavior is very, very special. They are going to have to hypnotize their prey. Basically lure the prey into believing that it's safe. We call this a glamour. Okay, a lot of vampire lore has glamour. It is basically, why hello my dear, type of thing. Okay, and yum 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 yum. Okay, it's also one of the reasons why the vampire has been so heavily linked to sex. Yeah, because type of thing. Okay, and that's where the weird stuff gets into, but that's another video that I'm not going to make. Anyway, moving on. So that then brings us, since we're here, into a practice called hemophagia. It literally means blood eating. I know. Anyway. Now, in a human, such as myself, not exactly a good idea. Here's why. Blood is extremely alkaline. Well, that's a bit hyperbolic. It is alkaline in the sense that it is not neutral. Okay, most blood, I believe blood is somewhere in the high 7s, low 8s as far as the pH goes, which is alkaline. Okay. Well, our stomachs don't like that. Okay. Not to mention there's a heavy metal component in the hemoglobin, but we'll get to that in a minute. Okay. So everybody's like, oh my, you need to have an alkaline diet because acid causes cancer. No, you're wrong and you're stupid. Seriously. Okay? See, the pH of your stomach is some of the highest pH of anything, and we do that so we can break stuff down in a timely manner. Now, if you throw all of this alkaline stuff on top of it, it's going to drop the pH. That's going to shift the pH. And it's going to shift it towards neutral, because that's how math works. Okay? Which means, in order to break this down, vampires are going to need something very, very special. Okay? Now, humans and anything with what we call a stomach actually has something very, very interesting in addition to the acid. Okay? These are called stomach enzymes. Okay? Now, what the stomach enzymes do is they grab something like, say, a protein, and they break it apart. Okay? Saves on energy. The reason why we do this is because, well, yeah, we can break it down with, heat or just chemically. The problem is the chamber's made out of the exact same stuff that we're consuming, and, well, we don't want the chamber to burn down or melt, so bad idea. Okay? So what these enzymes are going to do is first they're going to take the hemoglobin molecule and break it apart. Okay? So now you got a little bit of extra stuff, but there's a problem there. You're going to need another enzyme that's going to be able to come in and strip out the iron ion. That's part of the hemoglobin. That's what makes our blood red. Okay? I actually did a video on the different colors of blood, and, well, if we were from a copper latency instead of an iron latency, our blood would be green, like a Vulcan. Okay? Go ahead and check that out. Now, oh, and by the way, if you wanted black/blue blood, our hemoglobin would have nickel or zinc, I believe, if I remember my notes correctly. Anyway, not important. So what they're going to have to do with that iron molecule is they're going to have to set it off over here and just kind of let it hang out for a little while. Okay? Now, what's left of the hemoglobin is just oxygen, hydrogen, and carbon, like anything else, okay? Maybe a little bit of sulfur, I don't remember exactly, okay? But that is then going to get repurposed and turned into meat, okay? Well, they are still going to need to breathe because they are still going to need oxygen in order to carry on biological processes, which means they are going to have to repurpose the iron that they have just harvested and put it into their own hemoglobin. Okay? Now, given that Mr. Vampire is basically human just from looking at him, I'm willing to bet he has the same basic hemoglobin that I do, or anybody does. Okay? So, he is going to have to basically rebuild his own form of hemoglobin to allow this to happen, which is a lot of steps, dude. Seriously. Yeah. Okay. Now, the way digestion works, okay, is you have two organs that contribute these various enzymes in your stomach. Okay. One is called the pancreas. Pancreas, by the way, primarily deals with sugars. Okay, it's one of the reasons why when you're diabetic, that means your pancreas is a little on the upset side. Your liver, on the other hand, and your liver, your gallbladder stores it, contributes various other chemicals, namely bile. Bile helps you break down fat. Okay, it emulsifies it. That way it goes. Okay, but it also has a lovely amount, kind of a lovely effect on various proteins as well. Okay, and there's a few other enzymes that get produced that go directly at proteins, depending on the type of protein we're talking about. Okay, something like chitin, we're really not that great at breaking down. That's why you don't eat your fingernails, and bugs aren't exactly great. Kind of cause some indigestion, you know. Ew. Never mind the diseases. Anywho, when it comes to actually digesting the blood, gonna be some issues there. Okay, so in order to be able to digest actual food, the acid pumps in the stomach are actually going to be a lot more robust than those of a regular human. Okay, which means they are also going to have a slightly variant diet because they're going to need a lot more chlorine than what we do, because the acid in our stomach is hydrochloric. Okay, hydrogen chlorine. Yeah, when it's solid, it's called hydrogen chloride. Yeah. Okay, mix it with water, then you get hydrochloric acid. Bob's your uncle. Okay, so these guys are going to have a lot of salt in their diet. Okay, I would actually not be surprised if table salt is actually a bit of a snack for our dear little vampire. Okay, which means they're going to be mildly explosive in water. Here's why: sodium. Yeah, sodium and hydrogen and dihydromonoxide, water, don't make good friends. It's an explosive, highly kinetic reaction. It's really cool to watch, though. Highly recommended. Anyway, their kidneys are also going to have to be significantly more robust in order to deal with the metabolic waste products of them feeding on blood and high amounts of salt. Okay, see, your kidneys deal with what is called metabolic waste. This is the stuff that your body creates after it breaks things down and turns it into stuff you actually need, like parts, so that you can have new cells again. Okay. The reason why it is yellow is because it goes through some processes. First of all, it starts out as uric acid, then it turns into urea, then it turns into urine. All of that down the line. Urea is, by the way, naturally rather acidic, and then it's turned into urine, which is relatively neutral. Okay. Now, just because you are peeing out something that is alkaline or peeing out something that is acidic does not have anything to do with what is inside the body. If you believe that, you are a moron. There we go. Now, I'm getting off topic here. Okay, so depending on what they would actually need the blood for, okay, now I'm willing to bet that because the chemical makeup of muscle, i.e. meat, is completely different from the chemical makeup of blood in a mammal, there's something in the blood that they actually want, okay, that their body actually needs for them. Whatever is left over or whatever it is that they don't need will get eliminated, okay? Now, if they have to feed on blood, then that means at least one component of that blood is absolutely necessary for their physiology to function. Chances are it's the iron. Okay. So, I'm also willing to bet that one of the best ways for you to tell who's a vampire, stick a fridge magnet to them. If it stays, and you put it on their arm, it stays. Hey, look! Okay, and he fed recently. Okay. But that might not be it. It might be a couple of proteins found in plasma that they are actually after, because those wouldn't necessarily be found in meat or anything else that you would find in another mammal. Okay, and I'm also willing to bet, because any digestive system is only going to be about 40% efficient no matter what you do with it, their droppings are actually going to be kind of iron laden. They will either be dark black, which I highly doubt, or they will be rusted. Kind of hard too. Ew. Constipation in a vampire. That's got to be nasty. Ugh, poor guy. Kind of sharp, man. Ugh. Okay. Not only that, let's say that the iron is actually necessary for cellular processes and is able to migrate out of the digestive tube, otherwise known as the digestive system. I'm willing to bet that their urine is also going to be rust-colored rather than yellow. Okay. I don't know if you've ever been to like a beer garden somewhere, and they've got the banner, it's got all the beers on it, and the really light blonde one. Okay, this is normal. You're okay here. They show something like a Budweiser, and then they start migrating over and over and over, and then when you get to Guinness, it's like, go to the hospital. Okay, it'll be kind of like that, but somewhere kind of on this end, as I'm looking, we're looking probably like an Irish red. Okay, that's what I would expect. Okay, so we've got that and that. And all right, so now one of the interesting things is in all vampire lore, they don't like sunlight, okay, for various reasons. Now in traditional vampire lore, sunlight makes them explode. Yeah, that's not actually going to be a thing, because, well, let's say these things actually evolved naturally. They're going to run into sunlight. It's actually a beautiful sunny day here in Tennessee, and I was out in it. It was delightful. Okay. They would have run into that. Okay. Because there's not a lot of caverns on the planet. Okay. There's also not a lot of deep, dark forest. And eventually the population is going to get so big that individuals are going to get pushed into sunny areas. And then they die. So they would have to come up with a way to protect themselves from this. Not only that, given they would have evolved from a common ancestor of regular Homo sapiens sapiens, okay, they would already be immune to the sun. That kind of mutation to make them allergic to sunlight to the point of spontaneous combustion is ridiculous. Okay, so as much as I cannot stand the idea of sparkly vampires, That would probably be a little bit closer, maybe kind of, sorta. They may have some kind of chitin-like material in their skin that would allow them to not only resist damage from their prey, but also resist radiation damage, and thus necessitating them to take on the iron. Okay? Along with the extra protein found in the blood and the large amounts of meat that they would undoubtedly consume. All right? Well, they wouldn't necessarily sparkle, but they may have an odd sheen to them. Okay? And I am also willing to bet, because of the high amount of iron that they would probably have coursing around in their body from a previous feed, they wouldn't be pale. Okay? I would probably be, as far as my skin tone is concerned, probably pretty average. Yeah. Okay. Now, if they do most of their hunting at night and, kind of sequester themselves out in the day, then yeah, okay, but still, okay. Now, that gets into the next little bit, flight. Okay, now according to vampire lore, vampires can fly. Not like this. Okay. Some of them have them shape-shifting into a giant bat creature, others into a bunch of little bats, both of which are ridiculous. Do you have any idea how much energy and resources it would take to do that? Okay, but for the sake of argument, let's say that they have some kind of wing structure that allows at least for some basic gliding. Powered flight on a humanoid, really hesitant to say yes, and there's reasons for that, which I'll get to in just a moment. Okay, so being a flyer would make capturing prey a little bit easier. Okay, especially if that prey likes to live in wide open areas. Okay. Farmland, meadows, things like that. Okay, that I am willing to forgive, especially if you're human-sized. Okay, here's the problem. Okay, we have a thing called the square cube law. Okay, now the basics on the square cube law says for every increase of 1 unit in overall size, you have an increase of 3 for the cubed. Okay? So if I move 1 inch, that means my thickness, height, and depth are now 3 times what they were. Yeah. Now, in order to have the kind of robust body that would allow something my size to take out something, give or take my size, with a bite, and not have it fight back, he's going to need some rather dense bones, which, by the way, precludes any form of flight, even gliding. Okay? We could get away with gliding, but we're going to have to sacrifice some stuff. Okay? At very least, we're going to have to drop bone density down by probably 50%. So we can get off the ground and not fall. You actually glide. It makes you lighter. Okay? Unless you want a thicker atmosphere, but then, it kind of defeats the purpose because he's going to get thicker anyway. It's just, nick. Okay? Now, if you want powered flight, well, guess what? You're a lot more avian than you are mammal because your bones are going to be hollow. Okay? You're going to have a lot more in common with an ostrich, which, by the way, can't fly, than you are with a human. Okay? So there's that. Yeah, just think ostrich with fangs and nasty temper, not much kicking, feathers, wings. Yeah, that's dumb. Okay, so, a lot of filler words. Richard, what's wrong with you? Well, there's that. So I'm going to kind of poo-poo flight on this. I don't really see that happening, and levitation's not possible at all unless you use magic, which we're not using magic here, so stuff it. But Richard, you're making vampires. I know, shush. Now, the next thing we have is shape-shifting. No, it's not possible. You cannot do it. Way too much energy. Where are you going to put the extra parts, etc.? Moving on. Lastly, improved senses, which in a predator I would actually anticipate. Okay. Now, I am willing to bet that a vampire would hunt at night. Okay. I would actually not expect to see them active in the day, even if they are immune to sunlight. Okay. Here's why. It's a hell of a lot easier to sneak up on the prey when they're not doing much. So I would expect Homo sapiens sapiens sanguinis to actually be nocturnal rather than diurnal, such as myself. Okay. I would also expect them to be able to inject some sort of venom. So right here, or possibly right here, there's going to be some venom sacs. Okay. But we're talking about senses right now, aren't we? Yeah. So their eyes are actually going to be a little bit larger than a normal human's, probably by about 50%. So, boom, baby. Yeah, they'll be huge. Not only that, their eyes will probably be slit rather than circular. Okay? So pupils will be slit pupils like a cat instead of round ones like a human or chimpanzee for that matter. Okay? As far as the pointy ears go, maybe it's possible. Okay. I would expect them to have increased hearing, specifically the ability to hear the very specific sound of people sleeping, and in a much closer fashion than if they were, they just happened upon a stumbling group, okay? Because they would have evolved in an aboriginal level of technology, or, well, actually pre-Stone Age, honestly. We're not even aboriginal at this point, okay? We would still be sleeping out under the stars and maybe kind of sort of wearing skins at this point, okay? So they would be able to hear us sleeping, which their ears would be specifically tuned to the general sound of a person going sloth. Okay, that's what that sound is called. Okay, sound of a sleeping person. And I'm also willing to bet that their ears would also be specifically tuned to the sound of a person snoring. Okay, so not that it'd be hard to pick it up necessarily, but they'd pick it up. Okay. That being said, hunting at night, especially during like a new moon, even with enhanced eyes, they will actually run into a bit of a problem. Okay? Lack of specificity, so they'll be kind of groping around. Unless they have an added sense that we don't, which is thermography. Okay? Thermal vision. They'd be able to see heat like a snake. Okay? Which, that's a bit of an evolutionary left turn in a primate. Just a hair. Okay? It's possible. Kind of doubt it. Okay? But they could develop another pupil that allows them to pick that up. Or, somewhere in their salivary glands here, they get repurposed and turned into kind of a modified pit, like on a snake. That's why when you see snakes, they got those things all along the upper lip. That's actually how they see heat. Okay? And now these are routed actually into the visual cortex of the snake, which logically it would, so they would literally be able to see heat. Okay? I have no idea what that brain would look like in a primate, but I'm willing to bet there would be a kind of a subvisual cortex that would process the heat and then kind of relay it back to the primary visual cortex. So looking through, so if you could see as a vampire in that fashion, there would probably be kind of a gentle red hue coming off of every single warm-blooded creature. They probably still see color, okay? They would probably still see light and dark exactly like we do. I doubt their eyes would be that different. But these pits would give kind of a weird overlay to it, okay? And I'm also willing to bet one of the major reasons why they're nocturnal is because going outside, like say in the middle of the American South, in the middle of summer, would be blinding. Okay? That would be horrible. And I'm also willing to bet hunting any earlier than, say, midnight in the middle of July here, oh God, that would be a slog and a half, man. It would be like, God, I'm blind type of thing. And I'm willing to bet that every once in a while they go like that in order to hide. Okay, just like, we do when it's really bright outside. Okay, we cover our eyes to get rid of the glare. I'm willing to bet that nighttime in the summer in warm climates would have a massive glare to these people. Okay? So, let's see, we got that. Scent. Okay? I'm willing to bet vampire noses would actually be a little bit larger, and I'm also willing to bet that their sinuses would be a little bit more complicated. Okay? Now, our olfactory tissue is relegated to right here. A little bit bleeds over into the pharynx. That is the chamber right behind the nose and just above the mouth. That actually pre-warms the air before it enters your lungs, so you don't freeze your lungs. Okay? Or overheat them, I may also add. Okay? It's also why, if you need to get control of your breathing, close your mouth, breathe through your nose. You'll get it. Trust me. The reason why we breathe through our mouth is for an increased amount of oxygen, because we need extra oxygen. But I digress. Now, I'm willing to bet that their olfactory tissue will expand in order to fill the pharynx and also the zygomatic, i.e. cheekbone, sinuses. Okay? And smelling for them would be kind of an intense thing. I'm also willing to bet that their noses would be attuned to very specific scents. The smell of a sweaty human, the smell of a sweaty animal, the smell of blood itself, okay, would probably drive them wild, okay. Now, with all of that in mind, there is another thing that the vampires would obviously be very, very interested in. It would also have throughout the rest of their body, because they're going to have to take down something relatively as strong as they are. Okay? So, their musculature is going to have to be a lot denser than that of the average human, which means these guys are going to be built. Okay? They're either going to be hulking or very, very lithe and very, very tight. Okay? Which is kind of what I'm leaning towards. I would actually be very surprised to see somebody built like Arnold Schwarzenegger in the 1980s as a vampire. I would not be surprised to see something of a track star with all of their lean muscle as a vampire. Okay? Because one, they're going to have to be faster than the average human. Okay? Average human can run a few miles an hour. They're going to have to run a few more miles an hour faster than them. Which means their pulmonary system, that is heart and lungs, is also going to have to be relatively more robust than the other hominid. Okay? Us. Also, once they get on them, because of the way they feed, not only are these parts going to have to be a lot more robust to keep the bite on them while they feed, but their arms and legs are also going to have to be able to move into a splaying pattern in order to into a wrapping pattern that allows them to keep their prey in line so that they don't get away. Once they are drained of blood, then they can, take chunks of meat and go from there. Okay? As for hunting style, pack hunting makes things a lot easier. Yes, you do have to give up some of the energy on the kill, but it's also a lot less energy to get the kill. Okay? So I'm willing to bet that vampires would actually behave a lot like wolves. So there would be a leader of the pack, an alpha, if you will, and then subordinates. Okay? Strongest, the leader would of course get the fine pickings, and then everybody else would join in. Okay? That means once they obtain true sentience, like humans, instead of semi-sentients, like dogs. Yes, dogs are sentient, by the way. That's how you can name them, and they answer to that. And they also know that they are not you, and you are not them. Okay. Once they obtain a level of sentience like humans, which they probably would, societies would inevitably form. And that leads us into an older video of mine, The Logic of True Blood. Okay, go ahead and check that out. Yeah, I came back to it a year later. Alright guys, so if you're new to the channel, hit that big red subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a like, leave a comment please, and also visit my website at vimandvigorelli.com. You can also reach it through vigintmed.com, and you can go ahead and get yourself some merchandise that I have created just for you, and maybe even check out some of my books. Remember, the second edition of my very first novel, The Hidden Race, has just dropped on Amazon. It should be available in wide distribution in places like Walmart, Barnes & Noble, and all of that. You're going to have to check around in order to find that. Okay? All right. So I'll be back later, guys, with something else. Take care. Bye-bye.